Hello and welcome to Dialogue. For the first time in 14 years, China is changing its stance on monetary policy to moderately loose from prudent. According to a recent conference, the country is to implement a more proactive fiscal policy, and China will also step up unconventional counter-cyclical adjustments and boost domestic demand and consumption. So what factors have contributed to the government's new stance to cope with the economic slowdown? What does a moderately loose policy mean? In a nutshell, what policies can we expect to stabilize the economy? Join us for discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Professor Liu Baocheng from University of International Business and Economics, Clare Pearson, International Development Director, Asia at DLA Piper, Professor Radhika Desai, Director of the Geopolitical Economy Research Group. Welcome to the show. So Claire, I will start with you. I wonder what's your impression or what part impressed you the most based on the recent developments?
Well, for me, the part that I really focused on is the boost to internal consumption. So this is China completely changing the way that it offers policies to make investment more efficient in the country. So as a law firm, this is impacting us greatly. Over the last 3 weeks, I've been in 3 different parts of China. I've been in Hainan, I've been in Shenzhen, and I've been in Shanghai. And what am I witnessing? I'm witnessing catalytic growth that I have not seen for 6 years. So this loosening, if you like, of monetary policy is really increasing the confidence, not only of Chinese investors, but foreign investors into China. I'll just give you a couple of statistics, if I may. I visited Lausanne Hotel School in Hainan. They've gone from 1,000 students in 2017 to 4,000 students in 2024. I also visited Renmin School in Hainan, and they'd gone from 2,000 students 2 years ago to 5,000 students. So whilst I was in the province, I met 2 CEOs. I was working with a UK CEO and a French CEO. Both of them were, when they arrived in the island, they were ambivalent about their investment. When they left, both made a firm commitment to the province. I saw the same thing when I went to Shenzhen. I went to a friend's technological company. They make agricultural robots. And 8 years ago, I'd visited them. There were 5 people at their global conference. Wasn't very global. 2024, 51 distributors of Chinese high-tech products, everywhere from Midwest America to Latin America to Africa to Middle East to Southeast Asia, were there to learn about the Chinese technology so they can sell it abroad. So China has gone from manufacturer of the world to investor in the world, but also in the different provinces in China, because China's really 24 different countries, all with their own coherent investment opportunities. And now people in China are beginning to leverage the platform of 5G and to take advantage of the high-speed rail that connects all the provinces to achieve the catalytic growth and to satisfy the pent-up demand of the last 5-year investment hiatus. So I'm very confident that this loosening policy has come at the right time so we can see sort of Olympic speed growth again.
Baocheng, obviously, the morale is being boosted, let's say, in terms of the sentiment. Give us some background information. Why or what factors are contributing to the government's decision-making process to adopt such a strong stance in terms of policies?
Well, I think there are 3 types of the government stimulus with different targets along its history. In the late 90s, in order to weather the Asian financial crisis, much of the stimulus package was catered for the infrastructure development, building roads and support real estate developments. And then in the 2008, there was quite a dosage of 4 trillion RMB that's there to support more of the manufacturing sector, which was able to address the contagion from the Lehman Brothers, the financial crisis, which was a trigger. And now, we're also seeing that there are domestic and also external challenges we're facing. But this amount of dosage by prudent, shifting into a more moderate, the loose policy, there are two types of indications in that. One is that we target more on a holistic approach, instead of merely on infrastructure or manufacturer side, but rather to support the Chinese drive for high quality development by supporting the new productive forces. The other is that it is not really a one-time dosage. It is there to really to see how the market would react and how the liquidity can be translated into productivity. So this is really a more of a cautious move, but with the very positive note. In addition, I think now, as Clare has mentioned, with the three drivers for GDP growth, be it export, be it consumption, and be it investment, now, much of the focus, I think, is unprecedentedly is on consumption. But consumption is the outcome. But in the meanwhile, the shifting the focus from the supply side to consumption does show that Chinese economy is getting mature enough, and now the outcome or the end really comes to play. So this is really a very positive signal, and hopefully the market, both domestically and internationally, can receive such a message and turn into positive actions.
Now, Baocheng, briefly, you mentioned about this, moderately loose monetary policy. People would say this is the first time in 14 years. Last time it was used is after the 2008 financial crisis last time. If you can put a number on that policy, that's about 4 trillion yuan in terms of liquidity. So are we anticipating that kind of money, that kind of cash or liquidity into the market to support consumption, to support the demand?
Well, instead of directly injecting a lot more liquidity through printing money or digitized money, but this time much of the effort is really put into the long-term bonds. So this can alleviate the temporary issues, particularly to address some of the local government who are debt-ridden. And then, the one purpose is to support the consumption, particularly to deal with the real estate sector, where the unsold buildings can be sold through subsidies and through the support of the banks to the real estate developers who are on the white list, and also is there to initiate more of the consumption subsidies for consumers to buy more of the e-vehicles and to support the green transition of the Chinese economy. And then it is also there to look into the long term. So by combination of dealing with immediate challenges and also by putting into a longer track to see that the next 5-year plan, how it's going to fare out with the Chinese, the strategy for economic development. And that's also very important. The other issue is that it is really combined with more of other type of policies by further liberalizing the Chinese market, particularly for the manufacturer side, eliminating all the restrictions for foreign participation. And most recently, 8 cities have been open for foreign investment in hospitals on wholly owned basis. So This is really an entire basket one, that instead of simply by injecting liquidity, by adding money. So, and that is why the market does not really respond with higher inflation.
Radhika, I wonder what's your understanding of this shift of stance? Since September, actually, over the past months, we have been basically hearing this coming out of new policies, stimulus policies, in terms of property sector and other like debt issue to solve that issue in local level. And also, of course, along with this monetary policy, the change of stance is this fiscal policy. The stance right now is like a more proactive, fiscal policy. Usually, the Chinese policy is proactive, but now more proactive. So we are seeing this combination of this monetary policy, which is moderately loose, and then it's more proactive fiscal policy. What is the signal, and what is the final goal to achieve here?
I think that the basic signal is to simply tell the world that China is ready to stand up to the enormous international challenges that it faces. So the way I read the looser monetary policy, I mean, it's very different from Western monetary policy, loose Western monetary policy in a couple of senses. Historically, loose monetary policy in Western countries has tended to go into the financial sector, essentially expanding financial activity rather than productive activity, and it has gone towards consumers. Whereas I think that China's loose monetary policy is directed towards productive investment primarily, and of course also to propping up the agents that have historically supported productive investment, such as the local governments and so on, which need help at the present moment because they are indebted, and so on. So that's one important difference. The other is that I definitely agree with what's been said, that there is a certain shift, but I think it's important to understand the nature of this shift. The Western countries, Western commentators again have long been calling for expanding consumption. And of course, that's happening in this report. There's a lot about expanding domestic consumption. But the word domestic is key. I don't think that the people who are, the policymakers are thinking about expanding domestic consumption at the expense of investment, which is what was being urged. What they're looking at is expanding domestic consumption at the expense of exports, particularly given that they face such a hostile environment with Trump taking the presidency and so on. So I would say that in these ways, the Western reading may be a little different, but I expect that there will be continuing emphasis on this new productive forces and increasing investment and so on. And I would say again that the expansion of the domestic market is really also not such a big shift, because China shifted to what it called dual circulation many years ago already. So it's really a question of changing the balance. And one final point I'll say, you asked what struck us about this report. So one of the things that I noticed is that they want to improve investment efficiency, and that's always, of course, a good thing. But there is a difference, again, between improving investment efficiency by essentially making the financial bottom line the most important arbiter, which is what happens in the West, and a more developmental approach to that, which allows for the state to support important new technologically advanced industry and so on. And I hope that it will be the latter type of improvement of investment efficiency that the planners will look for.
Clare, of course, people say policy stance change is to deal with this slowdown of the economy, this concern of deflationary pressure on the Chinese economy. But of course, long term, China is also, in the process of transforming the economy from one driven by export and heavy investment to one based on service, based on innovation, based on knowledge, based on consumption. So this is also part of that overall process?
Yeah, definitely, Shindor. I think it's very interesting. You just used the word transform. Professor Radhika used the word shift. And I think that's primarily what's going on. We're in a period of massive transition globally. And the reason I think that this transition is going to be led by China is because we've seen nothing but transition for the last 30 years in the Chinese economy. Any CEO who works here has gone through 10% GDP growth per annum for 30 years. So if you were to look for the people who could front the multinational of the future, and you were interviewing a panoply of candidates, who would you look for? Would you look for the person who'd been a sort of a comfortable, relaxed, everything always works in the way I said it does for the last 30 years, conservative environment? Or would you look for the sort of collaborative economy that we're seeing in China now? There were two events I attended in the last couple of weeks which really shocked me. You used the word innovation. So one of them was here in Beijing, and it was an Africa, Europe, China Green Transition Technology Transfer Conference. That's the sorts of things we go to in law firms. And I didn't really know what to expect. We've been unused to conferences for the last 5 years in China. So this convening power of China is critical to the lifeblood of business. So I went to the conference and I looked at the presentations that were coming from Chinese green technology specialists. And one of the ones that stood out to me was, China makes 80% of global solar panels. And this gentleman was attaching solar panels to the roof of cars in Africa. So when you're driving your car, you can generate electricity and sell the electricity to the grid during peak periods. So you can make money by generating solar energy, by driving your car, by selling it to the grid. And then there was another gentleman who was talking about zero carbon jet fuel. So I think the primary difference during my period in China, when I started in this office in 2005, there were about 4 people. Now there's 150. When I started in DLA Piper Shanghai in 2002, there were 2 people. There's now about 200. That's 100% growth. So law firms, the service sector, as you call it, we grow when our clients grow. It's a microcosm of the Chinese concept of win-win. So one thing I noticed at the environment conference was the green tech sector is critical not just to China, but to the world, because China's part of everybody's supply chain. So I think China's done 2 things really well. It's not just focused on China's problems and is selling a solution, green tech. It's focused on the world's problems and is selling the Chinese solution globally. That's been the difference. That's why this law firm goes from 2 to 200 in Shanghai. And people don't really talk about the service sector so much in China, but it's growing very rapidly because it used to be made in China. It's now innovated. It's the design of the product. People used to design the product in Silicon Valley in the US and then make it in China. Now they make it in Silicon Valley, Shenzhen, and sell it to 51 countries globally. And so, of course, the service sector increases with that as we have to deal with tariffs and all sorts of hurdles to global expansion. But so I think China's done 2 things well. People globally, governments globally are beginning to copy China's special economic zones in their country to promote. So what Deng Xiaoping did in the 90s, other global countries that are experiencing a difficult growth period are beginning to do those special economic zones within their own confines. And if there's 2 statistics that can really symbolize China's growth for me, it was that in 2017, there were 1,700 trains between Chongqing and Duisburg in Germany, taking goods from China to Europe. In 2023, on the same train track, there were 21,000 train journeys taking goods from central China to central Germany to distribute across Europe. So China is sort of umbilically connected to Europe now through the railway. And so it's exporting Chinese innovation to the West. That's the new thing. When I arrived here, it used to be things coming from the West to China. Now China's innovating and taking things to the West along the railway. And as a service sector industry specialist in a law firm, we've benefited enormously from that. And I just went to the other event I went to was the European Chamber CSR Awards in Nanjing, in the sort of industrial heartland of China. And who did I choose as the winner? So I had the winning list here because I've done these awards for 7 years, and I'd chosen SAP, the German
German
AI
software,
company.
yeah.
Yeah, German software company. But I thought I'd kickstart by saying, does anyone in the room have a policy within their CSR in their company that aligns with the government policy of common prosperity? A lady on the front row jumped up and she gave a one-to-one analysis of why common prosperity was part of SAP's CSR strategy. SAP has this great program called Girls Power Tech, where they take girls from remote parts of China to work on AI in SAP labs in 11 provinces in China. Not one or two, 11. So German companies are coming to China not to make stuff, but to create, to cultivate, and to elicit the ideas from China that will create the technology of tomorrow for export. So I feel that's the big difference. I mean, I think it comes down to that really nice African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And with BRICS Plus, China's taking 45% of the world with it on its innovation journey. So if you go alone in 24, it's going to be a lonely ride. But if you go with BRICS Plus, you're going to be able to launch your product in Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Lanzhou, and you're going to be able to export that via rail to Europe. So China's now revisioning itself as a global hub for innovation export rather than a manufacturing center for innovations from outside. Like, it's exciting. You know, it used to be called the Silk Road because the silk was made in China and the porcelain and the tea went out from China, and the Silk Road, or the Belt and Road, is now going out again with Chinese products. So it's exciting. I think it's a great time.
Yeah, Radhika, if we can stay away a little bit from the topic of this policy change of stance, change of the stance. And if you look at the Chinese transformation, of course, during this transformation, I think it's sort of it's expected like there will be some disruptions, there'll be some slow growth. And also internationally, externally, if you look at the China and the world, especially China and the West, we do see the disruption of supply chain, U.S. export restrictions, tariffs, for example. There are some challenges, some difficulties, but still, I mean, China is a big country. China is growing. China is changing. So there's an important role for China to play in the world. Is that the case?
Absolutely. I mean, China, for the reasons that my colleagues have already pointed out, China is critically important both for manufacturing and now increasingly for technologically sophisticated lines of production, innovation, etc. And I would say that precisely for that reason, despite all the noises that are coming out of the Trump camp, so to speak, at the president-elect's statements, and all this talk about imposing 20 and 30% tariffs on China and 100% if they go ahead with de-dollarization and so on. I mean, this is complete rubbish. Trump's own friends, CEO friends, are going to object to it. People like Elon Musk are deeply invested in China. And of course, the ordinary people of the United States who have elected him with a small margin, precisely because he was seen as, being president when inflation was low, and under Biden, inflation went up. If he imposes these tariffs, inflation is going to go through the roof, because what has kept inflation low for the last so many decades in the world is precisely the low-cost manufacturing that China has been able to offer the rest of the world, particularly the West. And this is what has kept inflation low, not any magic performed by the Federal Reserve. So I would say that for all these reasons, China's size, China's importance, and I think China's successes, more to the point, which are after all responsible for its importance today. These are the things that are going to make things change. And I would say one other thing, Claire was emphasizing the importance of going, together with other countries and so on. And the Western world is right now despairing about, we are experiencing deglobalization, etc. But in fact, what's happening is that historically, the West and Chinese have always had two very different interpretations of globalization. For the West, it was open up the whole world economy and subordinate it to Western economies. For China, it was let's expand trade and investment ties and other ties for mutual benefit in a negotiated fashion. And that interpretation of globalization is going to now come up to the top. It will prevail, and it will demonstrate that China is therefore the leader, not just in economic terms, but in terms of international economic governance and so on.
Will Baocheng, of course, along with this monetary policy and the fiscal policy, the readout of the conference also touched upon, such strong language like, quote, China is to step up unconventional counter-cyclical adjustments, focusing on domestic demand and boosting consumption. So these unconventional tools, what could that be in terms of policy? Is that a combination of short-term and long-term interests, that kind of tools?
Well, the most ostentatiously, of course, is the booster into the liquidity issues. But I would say that liquidity is only a precondition to boost the economy, because China is experiencing an uphill battle in boosting the high quality development. And we can see that the changes China has really made, even at the beginning of the Chinese open door, people like Clare were not really even permitted to enter into negotiation rooms. And so now, with the protection of intellectual property, with all the rule of law that is in place, that's the most attractive points, not only for foreign investment, but also for all domestic market players and even for consumers, so that they are able to predict, what they really contribute can be rewarded. So this is, by improving the investment environment, and that's more fundamental. The other is that to give more confidence to the private sector is also a priority, because China, particularly for the younger generation, is really experiencing a tough challenge. One, of course, we are to blame, because we didn't really give the right type of the skills for our graduates on the campus to fit into the changing environment. But the other is that the private sectors offered most of the job opportunities, roughly 90%. So therefore, the business leaders, entrepreneurs need to be given the right type of confidence. And the other is we are providing a more level playing fields for all the different type of players, like foreign businesses, state-owned ones and private ones, so that they can have equal access to the liquidity. And then the innovation can also take place, actually more importantly, within the business rather than those labs, on the universities or with some of the research institutions. So, and then it is also important to see that we have nearly 80,000 type of industrial parks. So how we can really upgrade our industrial parks by having more synergy among them, so that they can move along a more of internal supply chain, instead of everyone is doing chips or everyone is doing petrochemicals. So to have those stuff that laid out, that's more important. So now it is really a sort of a habit for people to look to the central policymakers. Give me policy. Right. But business communities
we have to
need
stop
to make
there,
the
Baocheng. With that, we conclude today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qianduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.